Aussie Suffer at your sim, and today I'm going to be showing you the basics of how to fly the Cirrus Vision Jet G2. I'm going to be showing you from departure, takeoff, climb, cruise to descent and an ILS approach. If you want to follow the flight with me, set the departure to Orlando Executive, and then we're going to arrive at Treasure Coast International Fort Pierce. We'll go to our EFB, we'll make sure we have the procedure changed to ILS 10 right, transitioning via Zaza, then click change procedure. We also want to make sure the flight details are set to IFR. We go back and we set our cruise altitude to 19,000 feet. We click file flight plan with ATC and send route to avionics. Hopefully everything will be set up in the aircraft's avionics, and we'll click start flight. For our flight for takeoff, as we're started on the runway, we want to make sure we got some things noted in our heads. We want to know our takeoff and climb speeds. So we go to the speed bug page, and we have the rotate speed set to 85 knots. So we're going to pull back on the stick at 85, and our climb's around 165 knots. I normally change it to 160, a nice round number. Now I want to introduce you our auto throttle here. We've got an MTC gate and we've got full. After we take off, we're going to press auto throttle and it's going to set it back to MCT gate. So we have to bear that in mind. We have our speed max selector. Once we go above our transition altitude, which is 18,000 feet, it will show our speed in Mach instead of knots. So we've got 160 set at the climb speed, but that's the FMS speed. If we want to manually override that, it goes to blue, and we can now change the speed up and down here. And now you should see whatever speed we've selected, that's what the plane is going to manually hold on the auto throttle. We're going to set it to manually because we want to get used to manually controlling the aircraft for now as a beginner. So we've selected our cruise altitude to 19,000, but we want to start our initial climb to 2,000. A nice easy number. So we've got our altitude select here, and up here on the screen it is going to whatever we set. So we set to 2,000. We want to make sure we click bearing 1. Our ILS is tuned to 11055. That's the ILS approach in Fort Pierce, so we can bring up the map here to verify that. So we'll go to the chart, we'll go to approaches, ILS localizer, and we've got here 11055 written in the corner. Our nav source is FMS, just like the Cessna. In the Cessna this will be called GPS, on the CDI. On this plane is FMS because that's what the FMS has programmed for us. And we can see our flight plan by going to Home, Flight Plan, and all our altitudes are all here. So if we want to follow the VNav down to our approach, it will take us here to 2,000. We want to select our approach to make sure we have the right ILS 10 right approach here. We don't want to activate until we get closer to the Zaza waypoint. So before we take off, we want to set our heading bug to the runway heading. So we do right click, then left click, and a magenta line is there. So in case our autopilot disconnects, or we can manually fly it to there. You can see I have a map set in here, map in our CDI. To get that there, what we do is PFD map settings, HSI map. We can turn that off and that will show how the Cessna shows, but we want to turn HSI map on just so we can quickly glance if we're on the right track, so we don't have to keep glancing over here. We're just trying to simplify things for us. Now I want to go back to our flight plan, and I want to manually adjust the speeds. So at Zaza we want to be slowing down to our approach speed, which is 140 knots. It's just taking the workload of us having to manage it ourselves by adjusting this manual auto throttle speed map adjuster. So I want to make sure the plane automatically changes it to 140 knots, then we click enter and it's programmed in. I want to do the same again here. We don't have to do it, I'm just trying to make it easier for us. So we want to be over the runway threshold at 90 knots, right? So off the fence of the runway, we want to be that slow. So before then, I would say around T-key, we're going to make sure we're nice and slow around 115 to 110 knots. That's a good speed. After we reach that speed, we'll manually reduce the thrust lever ourselves and try and maintain 90 knots. I'm going to write all the V speeds in the description below so you know, and we want to try and get them in our heads so when we're flying the approach, we know what speeds we should be at. Now I'm going to go ahead and take off. We've got our heading bud set, we've got our altitude set, our speeds all set, and we're looking good. So when we get to around 85 and 90, we're going to rotate. We want to make sure we've got 50% flap, which we do. So we're 50% flaps, and we're going to go ahead and take off. So release the parking brake and full power. We'll get a little chime here, we can ignore it or it will get ignored automatically. We want to maintain runway center line. We're looking for 85 to 90 rotate speed. 85, there we go, 90 rotate. We want to hold 10 degrees, positive rate, gear up. When we reach 115 knots, we want to raise our flaps. That's 0. So we'll put our autopilot on for now. We'll select heading. Then we'll turn our heading bug to the direction of our GPS track, which is this way. So we're going to turn it over there, and then we're going to click nav, and when it intercepts that line, it will automatically follow that line. So we want to put auto throttle on. See, the throttle automatically reduced back to MCT power. We're going to start increasing our speed, and that's correct. So 115 knots, we want to put our flaps up, and let's do it to set 19,000. Now we want to click FLC, just like the Cessna flight level change, and our speed set to 159 knots. This should be around 160 knots climb speed, so we've set that here. It's also set up here, but when you click FLC, it always goes by this number here that you set, and you can change that by the vertical speed dial over here. So we just want to turn our head in closer to the line here so we can intercept that line, and then it will change from heading to nav automatically. There we go, we've got FMS flashing here. The heading automatically turned off and it's on now. So the FMS, the flight management system, is now following the flight planned track. I'm going to move forward to when we start to level off, just to keep this tutorial nice and short. So I'm going to skip forward to then. We can check our cruise climb takeoff speeds by clicking flight plan, VNAV, and we have here climb. I set that to 160 knots by myself. Cruise, I set that to 240 because in career mode, if you go over 250, you get penalties. So I didn't want to go over speed. And I set descent to 245 for the same reason. I didn't want to go faster than 250 knots. So there's the tips I can give for you so you don't get point deductions in career mode. But remember, those speeds only apply if you have the FMS button selected in the autothrust, so the plane will not go over those speeds. And the same at these waypoints, the plane will not go over these speeds that we've manually set here if the autothrottle is in the FMS mode. Right now we have it in manual. I could go ahead and press it to FMS, and the plane is still targeting what we've set in the climb speed here, 160 knots, and that's why it's in magenta. Magenta is the FMS color that the plane is targeting, and the blue cyan color is what we manually targeting. Okay, so 160 what we manually set the bug to. Magenta is what the plane is calculated, that we've programmed into the plane to hold to. So make sure you don't get those confused. One thing I need to go over, our outside air temperature is -4 degrees Celsius. Now, when you have an outside air temperature that is below 10 degrees Celsius, or when you're flying through cloud, we want to make sure our engine ice protection is on. So we've turned that on here to stop any icing build-up to our engine. It does lower your maximum speed having engine ice protection on, only by a little bit. In the Cirrus jet, it's not enough to make a difference that we'll notice. So if you're trying to do a performance climb over an obstacle, you want to make sure that's turned off.
Vertical track.
A vertical track means the plane is 1 minute away from top of descent, so we didn't even get to reach 19,000 feet for our descent to happen. So we press VNav, and the plane is going to descend itself down to 2,000 feet. Because we went over the vertical track, we're going to have to do it ourselves. But normally if we programmed this to a 15,000, 18,000, we would have had time for top of descent. So to descend back down, well, we're going to set our altitude. Let's set it to around 4,500. That's where it says we need to be on our approach plate. So 4,500. And we can press vertical speed. And let's set a good rate of descent. We're going to put our vertical speed bug to the VNav targeted bug. So it will help the plane descend. We are going to gain a lot of speed. So what we'd want to do, as you can see, our speed has changed from airspeed to Mach. We'd want to reduce that speed, or we can see if the plane is going to not go above our 250 knot speed, which it shouldn't. So we'll leave it for now and see what the FMS is, how it's going to handle it. Of course, when we reached our transition altitude 18,000 feet, we were supposed to push the barometric pressure to standard baro, but because we are under 18,000 feet, we're going to stick to our local pressure, which has now gone to 310. Press the comma key on the keyboard to automatically sync it with the local pressure. See, the plane here, the FMS is targeting 245 knots as we set in the VNav profile. If you can remember what we set here, 245. So we don't want to overspeed the aircraft. That's something I programmed in to prevent that from happening. I'm going to change that to 4,500 also. So I'm going to change this 4,500, and now that should change to 4,500 here. Enter, and there we go, it's changed to 4,500 in magenta. So when the plane gets to that magenta arrow here, the VNav is going to automatically adjust the descent rate for us, so we don't have to play with the vertical speed. The VPath is now activated. The plane has now started its descent again after we leveled off, and now the V navigation is taking over the descent. That's what was supposed to happen, but it didn't really go to plan. But never mind. Now you've learned how to get back onto the VPath. Just at the border of the 250 knots constraint, remember, below 10,000 feet we cannot go above 250 knots. Look, it started to slow down to 230. And that's a new speed limit below 10,000 feet that I set to. And the plane is now starting to target it. This VNav is the adjustable VNav is very useful when you're in career mode. You do not want to go over the speeds. Flying through the clouds, what a beautiful plane this is. I love it. It's my new favourite plane after the Cessna. So we're going to think about activating our approach, as our next waypoint is Zaza. So I'm going to go to flight plan, approach, and I'm going to go to activate approach. And now the approach is active. The plane is going to go into one hold, and that's going to give us time to descend from 4,500 feet all the way down to 2,000. I mean, it should really be either in between 4,500 and 2,000. So I could leave it there and wait for the plane to start its descent once it gets to Zaza. So it will loop over Zaza, and then we can start slowing. Well, the plane's going to start slowing down because we programmed it to, and then that's going to start descending all the way from there. We've got BOD written here, bottom of descent. To let us know that we're going to be 4,500 feet at that point as we go around. Here we are, we're coming in here and we're going to go like that. Perfect. Everything's looking good. Let's have a look at the VNav, what it's doing. So our vertical deviation is only 1 foot, so we're on the right vertical track. It's showing us what the required rate of descent is. 783, the plane's doing 800, so it's not that far off, that's fine. Bottom of descent's in 3 minutes, VNav's enabled. Our speed is targeting 140 knots. And our waypoint is Zaza. Everything is looking perfect. Remember, our ILS is tuned already. So when we get to Zaza, we're going to change our nav source from FMS to localizer. Just like we would in the Cessna, we'll change it from GPS to Lock 1. And that's what we're going to do here. Just refreshed our altimeter setting by pressing the comma key. Normally I'll talk to air traffic control to do that, but I want to keep everything simple for this tutorial. I must have pressed something because our plane went off vertical. Our plane went off our GPS track. I'll get it back on there.
Vertical track.
We're 1 minute away now. One minute away from Zaza. VNav is doing its job. We're back on our track. FMS is flashing. Auto throttle was selected, autopilot's on, everything is looking good. Weather is looking a bit miserable, isn't it? Good thing we're doing an ILS approach. Because we want to be in between 4,000 and 200, I'm going to put it to 3,000 feet altitude. I'm going to change that to 3,000 feet and I'm going to click. Speed. Let's go down a little bit, lose some speed. I'm going to select flap 1, start slowing us down. Plane's going to hold speed around here. We want to make sure the plane is actually below that diamond. So the diamond should be in this half when we press approach. If it's in this half, we might not catch our localizer. Well, there's a good chance we won't intercept the localizer and glide slope. So we want the plane to follow the glide slope. For that, in order for that to happen, the diamond has to be in the top half. If you ever have an incident where the plane doesn't descend, the diamond is probably in the bottom half and you was too high above the intercept. So we want to maintain 140 knots, flaps 50 when cleared on initial approach, which we are, or if vectored to the base leg we can do that. As we approach final approach, we want to make sure we are below 120 knots. So we've set 110 here. And then we want to have our gear down as we get to Tiki. Our full flap speed is 150 knots. I'm going to write these all in the description for you. So we can't use full flaps above, which is also represented by that white line. That's VFE speed, velocity flaps extend speed. Our stage 1 flap can be extended at 190 knots. I'll press the approach button now as the diamond's coming in. And then we have to make sure our nav source is set from FMS to lock 1. And then we've got lock in the green here, so we're established on the localizer, that's what that means. And the diamond has turned green and the plane is now going to be following the glide slope. Plane will now get ready to slow down to 110 knots, so that will change to 110. And we have the FMS speed mode selected on the auto throttle. One thing we have to be aware of, when we get to 400 feet, the autopilot's going to disconnect, and so will the auto throttle. So we have to be ready to be manual on the throttle. There's one thing I didn't set is my minimums, and that's 278 at 4 PS. There we go. 273, sorry, that's 273. 273. Right. You can see the runway here. Glide slope is intercepted. Here we go. We're on the glide slope. And now the speed should change when we get to Tiki. That's where we're going to put our gear down. We can, as this plane does not have speed brakes, we can use our gear to slow us down. And that VLO landing gear operating speed is 210 knots. So if we're below 210 knots and we really need to slow the aircraft down, we can put the gear down. So the plane is now targeting 110 as we have set here, 110 knots. Then we're going to get ready to make sure we're at 90 as we go over the runway threshold. Well, before we get to the runway threshold, we should be targeting 90, but we're going to manually do that with our thrust lever. So gear down. At Tiki, we can put the gear down. Now, so slowing down. Plane's going to hold 110 knots. We've got our diamonds looking good. We're center of the runway center line, and we're on the glide slope here. Localizer 1. Speed's all looking good. Well, our missed approach says 2,000 feet. We're going to set 2,000 feet on the altitude select. The plane's not going to go to 2,000 as it's following the glide slope and armed on the approach. So if, in case of missed approach, I'm going to set the autopilot to climb to 2,000 feet. We don't have to worry about that. I've got another tutorial that explains missed approaches, so give that one a watch. And I'll put that in the card at the end of the video. That O is our outer marker, and you can hear it going do 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 do, just letting us know we've hit our localizer outer marker. The auto throttle, or the auto thrust is doing a good job adjusting the thrust. Remember, not every airport supports ILS approach. You could change the approach to RNAV here, but we don't want to do that right now. But that's where you would find it if you want to change it. Okay, we're looking good. The wind, slight crosswind coming from the right. At 400 feet, the plane is going to disconnect autopilot, so we're going to be ready on the throttles immediately to maintain that speed once we're just going over the fence of the runway. So on the Vazis, we've got 2 reds, 2 whites. We're on the glide slope. If it was puppies, it would be a horizontal lights. Vazis are when you've got lights in a vertical line. It's not horizontal. Puppies are the horizontal version.
$500.
500 check. Full flap. Gear down. Check. Autopilot is disconnected, and we're getting ready to slow the plane down ourselves. hands on the throttle, we're slightly high. We want to follow the diamond, follow the flight director. We want to line up our yellow arrow with the magenta arrow. Give us a hand to get back on, and it did. Just like that, we're back on. Minimums will continue because we can see the runway. We want to slow down a little bit more. Going a little fast. We want to be 90 knots around here. There we go. Speed's looking good. Approach is looking good. We want to start a flare. We want to pull back. We want to aim for that white zone. We've got some massive stutters here. And idle the throttle. Back. And we made it. Here we go. We've successfully landed. Our brakes, so we're going to put them on full. These brakes are so strong, we rapidly slow down. And that's how you fly a Cirrus Vision jet. From takeoff, climb, cruise, descent, and ILS approach. Thank you for watching. If there's any other videos you want me to do, put it in the comments below. If you need any help, type that in the comments. Join my Discord, which is in the description. And if you could share your screen, I'll go over with you what you need to do if you're really struggling. If you've got any tips, put it in the comment below. Help all the community out. This wasn't an in-depth tutorial. This was just to get you guys transitioning from a Cessna into a jet and to show you the G3000 system. There's so much more you can do to this, but I just want you to know how to use the auto throttle, how to use managed FMS mode or manual mode, and how to go about activating your approach and flying at the correct speeds. So if you want to see more in-depth tutorials of this aircraft, let me know below. Or if you've got another aircraft you want me to cover, you just let me know. Thanks for watching, and see ya!